Hello guys, long time no see. You may have been wondering where I am, and I am in a mystical mode known as con prep mode. Con prep mode is the mode that people enter before a convention. I have a con gauntlet from August to September of 4 cons, which is awesome. Although after almost 2 years without cons, I have to remember what I need to do, what I need to make, lists for what I need to pack, all that sort of good stuff. One way I do this is I make lists. So before a convention, I will always make a list of things that I think I want to make, especially for pony conventions where there are set characters that are always going to be popular. And then I also make a list of things that I need to pack up. This list can go from simple things like clothes, hairbrush, toothpaste, things like that, to some of the more nitty-gritty things like money, counterfeit checker pen, and scissors, tape, and pencil case, and things like that. While lists aren't for everyone, I find that they help me stay organized the best. With a list, I can easily check things off as I complete them, and also keep track of things that I need to pack up. And then I can reference it later and see okay, I did remember this, or, oh no, I forgot this. Even outside of conventions, like when I went to Disneyland, I had a checklist of things that I needed to pack and things that I needed to buy for the trip, so that way I could make sure that I got everything that I needed. Well, it can be fun to just wing things on the fly. That isn't the best practice if you're going to be selling at a convention or craft show or an event like that. So what is on my convention checklist? First of all, we'll go with the personal items. These are, if I'm flying, what go into my carry-on, and if I'm driving, I'll have just a book bag with all these things in it. So that includes clothes, of course. I always bring an extra pair of socks, an extra shirt, and a few extra pairs of underwear, just to be safe. You always want to make sure that you have all that stuff on hand. It saves you an emergency trip to Walmart and money if you always make sure that you're prepared. If it's outdoors, you'll want to make sure that you have sunscreen and sometimes even a hat, because sometimes that sun beating down on your head, it gets a little much. Then there's things like toothbrush, toothpaste, toiletries, all that good stuff. I always bring my Switch, so I always make sure I have my charge cords for that, charge cords for the phone, and then the boring adult things like medications and making sure I bring a little pill case with ibuprofen and allergy pills and things that I might need while I'm there. And of course, if you forget anything, don't worry, there will always be a Walmart, there will always be a gas station. A lot of hotels will also have little convenience stores inside of them. And usually on street corners, you can always find 1 or 2 CVS stores. I know where MagFest is located, there's a CVS just 2 blocks away. So usually you're always near something where you can pick up some things that you forgot. It's just sometimes nice to try and be prepared as possible so that way you can save that money. But don't worry if you forget something. Now, onto the actual con preparation things for selling at the table. Some of these items are ones that you can't really purchase on the fly or pick up at a store, so these are more important to make sure you get everything packed that you need to be packed up. For example, you'll need your money box or your money bag, whatever you want to keep your cash in. You'll need to make sure that you have cash. Usually I do 101s and 105s for bigger conventions, and if it's just a small one-day thing, I might do 75 and 1s and 25 and 5s, or 50 and 1s and 50 and 5s. Just depends on what the venue is. And then you also want to make sure you have whatever card reader that you have. I have Square, so I always make sure I have my 2 slides. I have one for the lightning cable, and then I have one for the headphone jack. And then I make sure that I have my dip and tap reader, which is where you can put the chip cards and take Apple Pay and things like that. And for the chip reader, you always want to make sure you have your charge cord for it. Usually they can hold a charge the whole convention, no problem, but you always want to make sure you have it just to be safe. It would really suck if you have to then go into Square and type in the card numbers, which I have had to do before because I have forgotten my money box key, which is another thing on the checklist. Don't forget your money box key. Or if you have 2 money box keys, pack one where you normally pack it and then have an extra somewhere in with your personal things. So that way you always have a way to open that money box. Learn from my mistake. And then you want to have your cubes. If you are a print artist, you want to have your photo backdrop or whatever you're using for that. Most of this advice comes from the perspective of someone that does sell plushies mostly. And then I want to make sure that I have my bins for my buttons. I want to make sure I have my tablecloths. I want to make sure I have my banner or table runner, whichever I'm using for that convention. Then I want to make sure that I have a little notebook, which I use to keep track of sales and also write down notes and things that I need to remember. And I want to make sure I have my pen that can mark bills and make sure that the bills are real. Those you might have to buy on Amazon. Sometimes you'll find them at Walmart and Target, but Amazon usually has a bigger package of them, so that way that you make sure that you and whoever's with you will have plenty of those pens to check higher bills. Some people check 20s and over, some people only check things over 20. What you want to do is up to you and what you feel comfortable with. I always like to make sure I have pens and pencils, and as a plush artist I always make sure I have scissors and a needle and thread for sewing. I sometimes will bring fabric glue, so that way if anything happens I have that glue. You also want to make sure you have tape because things can rip. Sometimes a quick piece of tape is a great fix for a banner that just won't stay up. I always like to make sure I have tape. Zip ties is another thing I like to bring for the cube, especially for a multi-day show. I will put zip ties around like areas where they come together, so that way I make sure there's extra stability so nothing is going to fall apart. For example, when I was at NC Comic-Con, a girl was role-playing or something and she punched one of my plushies really hard, but because everything was zip-tied, nothing came crashing down. At most, a few of the plushies fell over. That was a win for me and won me over completely to the zip-tie side. Also for cubes, sometimes you'll want to have table clamps to make sure everything stays nice and clamped to your table. I also want to make sure that I bring the connectors for the cubes. I have pegs that can hook onto the cube wall, so I want to make sure that I bring those. And you want to make sure you bring any little decorative items that you have for your cubes. Lately, I've had so many things on my shelves that I don't really have the space for decorative items, but decorative items can bring so much to your setup. Whenever I have my jellyfish, usually I'll have a little undersea looking setup and it really attracts people to them. And of course, some of the more obvious things, you want to make sure you have all your product. For me, that's big plushies, small plushies, buttons, keychains, manufactured products, stickers, things like that. You want to make sure that you have all of that stuff. You also want to make sure that you have your business cards, something to put your business cards in if you want to do that. You want to make sure if you have your like portfolio, you bring that. If you're going to be taking commissions at the con, I always make a little form ahead of time and I bring those, and usually I bring a folder to put those in. You'll want to bring your price signs if you're not making those at the con, which I often do. I always bring little clips to clip the price signs onto the rack so that way people can see how much things are. I also like to bring a little paper that says I take card. That's always really helpful because some people won't ask and they'll just assume you don't take card. You always want to make sure you cover all your bases and are as customer friendly as possible with your booth setup, so that way people can just know to pull out their card. Most people ask. Some people, like I said, will be too shy to ask, so just a good thing to have. You also want to have things to pack these in. Usually I keep my cubes in a big container and then I'll use those blue IKEA bags. Those things are awesome. Those are pretty much across the board seen as the best way to pack things. They can fit a lot, especially plushies. You can smush a lot of plushies in there. They're awesome. Now, if you're flying, you want to make sure that you have suitcases with this stuff. Whether you go plastic or fabric depends on your preferences. Some people like the fabric more because it lasts longer. Some people like plastic because they can stand up a little more to a beating. That just depends on your preference. There is no right or wrong answer here. And if you're flying, you want to make sure that you have your check bag prepared if you're doing that. Or if you're going to be mailing your product to yourself, you want to make sure you call the hotel ahead of time, see that it's okay to do that, see what their rules are about that. And then you want to make sure that you have everything nice and boxed up, bagged if you want. Make sure you have the label prepared the way that they want it to be, like hotel name, care of so-and-so, date stay, and then you want to make sure that you get those sent out with enough time that they'll arrive, but not so much time that the hotel is stuck storing those items. Sometimes hotels will charge you if there's an item there for too long, and you don't want to have any extra charges. And of course, you want to make sure you have your ID for the airline if you're flying, for wherever you're going. It's always a good idea to have that on you. And now in the COVID times, you might want to make sure if you are vaccinated, you have your vaccine ID card. I've never had anyone ask for it, and I went to Disneyland and flew to California, but it could be a good idea to have it on hand just to be safe. I know some conventions are checking for ID cards to see if you're allowed to go maskless or if you're even allowed to attend the convention. So that's another thing to make sure you have, or at least have a nice clear picture of it on your phone. Or if you got it at like Walgreens or somewhere, usually they'll have your vaccine card accessible on the app. So that's always something good to have if it's something that you do have. And now in these COVID times, you might want to make sure that you have gloves, hand sanitizer, face mask, things like that. I know some people were during the brunt of the pandemic when they would do like outdoor craft shows, when those were first starting to happen, they would have hand sanitizer, like a spray on the tables. That way they could spray people's hands before they touch the things. Now that more people are vaccinated, that doesn't seem to be a precaution that a lot of people will need to take, but it might be something that you feel most comfortable taking. So just make sure that you have all of your safety goodies, even not during pandemic times. Bring that hand sanitizer. I cannot stress that enough. You're going to be exposed to a lot of germs. Con crud was a thing before COVID hit the scene. So I always usually stayed healthy by making sure I used hand sanitizer. I made sure that I always took a shower every night. So bring your shower toiletries and just practice good hygiene. Brush your teeth every night, all that good stuff. You want to make sure you take care of yourself. You also may want to have a charge brick. I know I usually get a charge brick that has where you can plug a normal plug into it so I can sew at the convention, but that's always something good to have if you have a lot of things that run on power, or if you don't want to pay for having an outlet near you. You may also want to pack snacks, and most importantly, water. You want to make sure that you either have a reusable water bottle that you can keep filling up at the water fountain, or if you have some space, you can get one of those big packs of water bottles at Walmart or Target or Costco or wherever, or you can just pick up a few at the hotel or the gas station before you head over. Make sure you have some way to get plenty of water. Sometimes under those hot lights, especially in the bigger conventions, you can get thirsty and not even notice. There are absolutely more things I can mention, like making sure you have some tissues on hand in case you sneeze, things like that. But I feel like this list has gotten extensive enough. Always make sure that you have an idea of what you want to bring. I always say write it down because even if it's something that you know you'll remember, and the excitement before a con and with everything else you have to remember, you might forget. It might slip your mind. So it's always better to make sure you have everything written out and then add to that list as you go, so that way you can make sure everything is nice and ready to go. Some people will just keep their con stuff always packed up so they're always ready to go. And some people like to unpack everything and put it up and then repack as they go. There's no wrong way to do it. That's all I have to say on this topic. If there's any other topics you want me to cover in regards to sewing, plushies, convention selling, online selling, anything like that, let me know in the comments down below. Give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe if you're new, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time. Take care, guys.